Well, welcome everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today to discuss the practicalities of ESEF, the mechanics behind the art of XBRL tagging, such as extensions and anchoring, and ultimately what a typical ESEF submission looks like. I'm so glad that so many of you could join us today. I can see there's still people coming in, but that's good. And just move over to the next slide. There we go. Fantastic. We have a great session. We have a oops. we have a great session lined up for you today, hosted by our strategic partners Arkk, who are one of the UK's leading fintech and financial automation specialists. Together with Arkk, this morning, we are going to give you an ESEF 101 and then take a closer look at the process behind ESEF, a process that at Black Sun we have simplified, streamlined, and embedded as part of your annual report process. And of course, we will also give you a full demo of our solution so you can see exactly what the end result looks like. Before I start the introduction, I just wanted to let you know that you can ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. And we'll do our best to make sure we answer every question as best as we can. Great, so let's begin. Oops. So my name is Mirko. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Black Sun. I've been at Black Sun for over 20 years, and during my time, I've been responsible for the technical definition, development, and delivery of all our technology solutions, digital technology solutions. I'm from a programming and web development background, so I understand XML data structures, the need to tag data accurately, and how to create and publish standards compliance document. As you can see, I am joined today by the real experts, Mary and Colin, who will now introduce themselves.
Thanks, Mirko. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Mary. I'm the technical sales consultant looking after the ESEF solution with Arkk. I've been with Arkk now for over 5 years. The majority of that time I spent heading up our XBRL operations that are based over here in Belfast, and more recently moved on to manage the commercial side for ESEF. And joining me today, I have my colleague Colin, who will allow introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Colin, and I've pretty much had the same kind of journey as Mary. I've been here for a number of years now, and I started off on the XBRL team, and now I've worked my way up into the ESEF manager role, and I genuinely deal with the day-to-day activities, including ESEF. That's anything from the tagging to the reviewing of the accounts, all the way through to a successful submission. So I'm always there every step of the way for the clients as such.
Thanks, Colin. So to give you a bit of an introduction to Arkk, Arkk was founded over 12 years ago in response to the HMRC XBRL mandate. We then entered the Irish market back in 2014 in response to the Irish revenue mandate for XBRL. And we now tag over 5,000 reports on an annual basis for both HMRC and for Irish revenue. And we partner with 30% of the FTSE 350. To date, we have done quite a number of ESEF reports. In fact, we've tagged over 200 ESEF compliant reports to date. And on the screen there, you'll see some of the reports that we've partnered with Black Sun who have gone through the full process that I'll go through in a few moments. And really the objective with our partnership with Black Sun is to make the process as seamless and as streamlined as possible when it comes to your year end. And we recognize that your year end is a time pressured period, and we really don't want to add a huge amount of work to that. So now, what is ESEF? ESEF is the European Single Electronic Format. It was rolled out by ESMA, and it first came to light in 2014. It's based on the premise that all reports across the EU should be more comparable than what they are at present. So it's really the aim of ESEF is to take away the manual reconciliation of annual reports. The recent introduction of UKSEF is the UK adoption of the ESEF taxonomy. It contains all the tags that are contained in the ESEF taxonomy, but it does include some additional tags, such as your company's house number and the tags for your SEC or disclosures. So ESEF itself, it applies currently to all main market listed companies in the UK and across the EEA. For those listed on the London Stock Exchange, ESEF applies to all accounting periods on or after the 1st of January 2021. And that means that those with a December year end of 21 will be the first in scope. As I've already mentioned, it does aim to increase transparency across the regulated markets, and it will essentially make the reports a lot easier to compare, as the tagged values on the primary statements in year 1 and notes in year 2 will be able to be automatically compared across reports rather than with the manual intervention of someone going in and reading the tagged line items in the reports. So your ESEF report, it must be publicly available on your website. Colin's going to show us an example of what an output will look like. But essentially it looks like your PDF report. The tags will be embedded into the background and it will be an XHTML page. And it also must be filed with the National Storage Mechanism in the UK or your regional OAM if you're listed elsewhere in Europe. The full annual report must be converted into XHTML format. And then the iXBRL tagging will, in year 1, just apply to your primary statements, and in year 2 to your notes as well. Year 3, we don't anticipate that there's some regulation changes expected in the UK, and likely down the line it will fall to other areas of the report, such as your SEC or disclosures, and maybe even parts of the front of the report as well. But we know for sure in year 1 it's your primary statements, in year 2 it'll be block tagging of notes. So what is iXBRL? XBRL is Extensible Business Reporting Language. And essentially what that is, it's a way of barcoding data in a report with additional context. The I in iXBRL lives inside the XHTML document, and it means that the report can be loaded in a web browser. So an XBRL report can be read by machine, an iXBRL report can be read by machine and can be loaded in a web browser so a human eye can read it. What is tagging? Tagging is the process of applying iXBRL to an annual financial report. And if we look at the example on the screen, we have revenue and cost of sales. Revenue, we would have to match that to the concept in a taxonomy. So in this example, the IFRS concept would be revenue. So we would go and find the relevant tag in the IFRS taxonomy called revenue. We would then have to further define that tag. So we'd have to confirm the currency. In this example, it is GBP. We would also have to confirm what period that tag applies to, or that numerical value applies to. So in this example, it's 2019. Again, this has been scaled in millions, so we'd have to apply that scaling to that numerical value. I would also have to define whether or not the value is a credit or a debit. And Colin will touch on this in a few moments when he takes us through the demo, but each tag also has a debit or a credit value. So depending on that, then it would also define whether or not you would tag that value as a credit or a debit to accurately reflect the line item in the report. So essentially tagging is not just a simple matter of matching the line item in the report to the applicable tag in the taxonomy. There are these additional dimensions that you have to add to each tag to clearly define the value that you are reporting. Now, when it comes to ESEF, there is the addition of the use of extension and anchors. And essentially what that means is that unlike your existing tagging, if you're familiar with it for your stat reporting for HMRC or for Irish revenue, for ESEF, if there's a line item in the annual report, there's no corresponding tag for it in the ESEF taxonomy. We then have to go and create a tag and anchor that back to the nearest item in the taxonomy. And that's referred to as extending and anchoring. So if we now look at the example on the screen, revenue from phone sales, that is obviously not an IFRS concept. However, if this was in an ESEF compliant report, we would still have to tag that value. So in this example, we would create a tag. So we'd actually end up creating a separate taxonomy that's just specific to that annual report, create that tag within that taxonomy, and then we'd anchor it back to the nearest line item in the ESEF taxonomy. So we would create a tag and likely enable it in this scenario as revenue from phone sales. We would then add the further dimensions to it, such as whether it's in GBP or euro or what currency it's in, the period it applies to, the scaling if applicable, and whether or not the value is a credit or a debit. And then we'd have to go and link that back to the nearest item in the ESEF taxonomy, which would be revenue in this example on the screen. So tagging itself is not merely a matching exercise. There's a lot more work that has to go into each tag to clearly define the numerical value, but ESEF does take that a step further than what we would be used to when it comes to your reporting for HMRC or for Irish revenue. And on that point, to compare ESEF to your existing reporting that you do for HMRC, it is a question I'm asked quite regularly. Can you use the same tagged report? And essentially the answer is no. The regulation is entirely different. For ESEF, it is only main market listed companies that are in scope. For HMRC, it's essentially all businesses in the UK and Ireland who file tax returns. For ESEF, the tagging requirements for year one, it's just your primary statements, and it is the group financial data that must be tagged. We also then have that addition of the extending and anchoring for line items that don't have a corresponding tag in the base taxonomy. For your HMRC or for your Irish revenue tagging, it is a full report that has to be tagged. However, if there's no tag applicable in the taxonomy that you're using to tag the report, then the information in the report is simply left untagged. Our turnaround time for ESEF, you'll have 4 months from your reporting period end date to submit your ESEF compliant report to the regulator. So our turnaround times are a lot quicker in-house. Our turnaround standard for ESEF on your final report is 24 hours. For HMRC, it's a standard 15 business days, so 3-week turnaround as you have a year from your reporting period end date to submit to HMRC. Our ESEF compliant files in-house, they are tagged by senior members of the XBRL team who have years of experience in tagging in IFRS. They also then go through multiple internal reviews before it's sent back to you to do a final review. For HMRC tagging, it is one review that we do in-house. And there's multiple reasons for that. One being for HMRC, we don't have the use of extension and anchor tags. We do for ESEF, so they do require an enhanced review in-house. But also your ESEF compliant report is open to public scrutiny. This will be in the public domain. It will be published on your website. It will be on the national storage mechanism for people to download. So you have that extra level of review required for your ESEF compliant report. Whereas for HMRC, if there's an issue with tagging, that's a private matter dealt with HMRC. It's not in the public domain. For our clients, for ESEF reports, we give 1 month standard review period. For our HMRC clients, it's a standard 2-week turnaround. This should be quite a straightforward process to review your HMRC compliant report, as they're all tags from the base taxonomy. Again, for your ESEF report, you do require that bit of extra time to review your extension tags. And the big thing with ESEF compared to if you are familiar with your HMRC report, your HMRC output certainly does not look like the glossy report that the team in Blackstone put so much effort into creating. Your HMRC report is in plain text. In fact, the HMRC gateway currently blocks a lot of images and a lot of text boxes. So it really has to be in plain text for submission. Your ESEF compliant report will look identical to your PDF report. We don't believe it will replace your PDF report. Your PDF, I believe, reads better on mobile devices and it prints better. So we don't think your PDF is going anywhere, but your ESEF compliant report will look identical to your PDF that the team on Blackstone create. And then you will submit your ESEF report in the UK to the National Storage Mechanism. Companies House are also building a portal to accept the ESEF compliant reports, and that's where the UK ESEF taxonomy comes in, because it has additional tags in there for things like your company's house number, and as I already mentioned, your SEC or disclosures as well. In Ireland, you will submit your ESEF compliant report to Euronext Dublin, and we have submitted, I think, to about 8 jurisdictions now across Europe. So yeah, we're very familiar with each different regulation, I guess, for each jurisdiction. So we're on hand to fully help with your submission process. For HMRC, you submit HMRC in the UK and to Irish Revenue in Ireland for your stat reporting. So to give you some background to Arkk, so as I've already mentioned, it's a quick turnaround. Our standard turnaround for your final report is 24 hours, and we do have quicker turnarounds available 4 hours with inside of business hours and 6 hours outside of business hours. We are fully ISO 27001 certified. We are paid up members of XBRL UK. And we sit on the committee that meets every 4 to 6 weeks. So any new regulation changes that are coming down the line, etc., we will of course keep you up to date with anything that we're aware of. We partner with Amana. They are a software provider for ESEF offering. They're one of the leading software providers in Europe and are XBRL certified as well. We're UK based, so our head office is based in London, and I can actually say for a change today that I'm based in sunny Belfast. So our iXBRL team are based out of Belfast, and that includes myself and Colin. As I've mentioned, the reports are tagged by experts. So the team here have years of experience. The team who are tagging the ESEF compliant reports. Colin started about a week or two before me, so he's coming nearly on 6 years with Arkk. So he certainly is an expert in the world of IFRS, nearly recited, I think, the ESEF taxonomy at this stage. So you're guaranteed to be in safe hands when it comes to the tagging of your report. We, again, quality customer service, you will have a direct ESEF support team that will look after any queries that you have. I will touch on the process a little bit more in a few moments, but you will get to know the team very well. And it is the people who are reviewing your report who will do the handover call with you and answer any questions that you have. So they'll be very familiar with your output and the tagging of your report. And the team here, as I've already mentioned, we tag over 5,000 reports annually for HMRC and for Irish Revenue, and that equates to 1 million tags. So when you take a standard ESEF report with the tagging of the primary statements, it equates to about 600 tags on average. The 1 million tags, it's quite a bit of experience that you have on the team to rely on for any questions that you have on the tagging of the report. So now to touch on our process. A lot of the work is done this year using your prior year annual report. So we will take your annual report. PDF is probably the easiest option to give us because it's readily available. It's on your website, but we can accept Word or InDesign. But the team in Blackstone will provide us with your annual report. We'll fully tag that. That takes 15 working days on our site. So 3-week turnaround. It's fully tagged. It's reviewed by a senior member of the team, and then it's tested to ensure you will receive a successful submission. We will create 2 review reports for you. Colin's going to show you an example of those in a moment. One is an Excel report that details all the tags that have been applied and all the dimensions that have been applied to each tag. We'll also then create an XHTML report with an inline viewer. This is my preference of a report to review. It's very user-friendly. It will look identical to your PDF, so you'll be able to see everything that has been tagged and untagged. It will look identical, again, to the report that you will publish on your website and submit to the regulator. However, it will have an inline viewer that will open once you open the report itself, and that will allow you to click through the tags. At that stage, once we've created those reports, we'll schedule a handover call with you and take you through the full report and ensure that you and your team are confident in the review of the report. And any questions that you have on the review, or any questions that we had internally when it comes to the creating the extension tag. So if maybe we label something slightly different to how it was labeled in your annual report, we'll bring that up on the call. You then have a month to review on your side and to come back to us with any questions, and we're very much there for you within that month. ESEF is a new process to everybody. There's over 7,000 tags within the ESEF taxonomy, so we certainly don't expect you to be experts in the world of ESEF. That is what we're here for. So we're very much on hand throughout that month to answer any questions that you have, be that with tags that have been applied directly from the ESEF taxonomy or tags that we've created ourselves, be that how we've labeled them or how we've anchored them back to the ESEF taxonomy and what your options are there. If you have any changes that you would like on your side, we will update the output and send it to you for one final review. And then essentially the process goes on hold until your final report is ready next year. At which stage the team in Blackstone will provide us with the final PDF, and we will extract the tags from your prior year report and import those into your final report next year ready for submission. The one thing I would recommend, if you have new disclosures in your annual report, particularly in your primary statements where it will impact the tagging in year 1, what we have found has worked quite well this year, if we get a draft of your primary statements while the team in Blackstone are creating your glossy annual report, we'll roll over the tags to that draft of your primary statements, and that will give you an opportunity to review the tagging of those new disclosures before your final PDF is ready. That's year one. Year two, we do the same process all over again. I think that it's probably a given that we'll have taxonomy updates at some stage. And we have given quite a bit of feedback to both ESMA and the FCA on line items that we are constantly creating tags for across different reports. So we are anticipating that there will be taxonomy updates, and we are expecting a taxonomy update for UKSEF next month. And we had one for ESEF back in late last year. So I think it's a given that we'll get taxonomy updates quite regularly over the next 3 or 4 years. But also in year two, we will have to do block tagging of notes. And what that means is one tag will be applied to each note in your annual report. So we'll go through the full process again, where we'll take, next year will be if your December year end, it'll be your December 21 annual report, fully tag the notes in that report. That takes 3 weeks on our side. We'll provide you with the same outputs again to review. You'll review on your side, and once the tags have been agreed, then come if your December year end, it'll be your December 2022 report, will roll over the agreed tags from your primary statements and your notes. So a lot of the work is front loaded to avoid any disruption or minimal disruption to your year-end process next year. Just bear in mind that it is really a 2-month project this year, given the 3-week in-house it takes us to tag and then the month to review on your side. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Colin, who's going to take us through a demonstration of the tagging and show you an example of what your output looks like.
Perfect. Thanks, Mary. So yeah, just in terms of this, I feel like we have now got to, well, in my eyes, the fun part anyway, as to show you what actually happens on the ESEF process. So I'm just going to show how we actually apply tags, what's involved in that process, and then I'll touch on the outputs provided. But just for the purposes of this demo, I've tried to keep things as simple as possible. So I will just touch on some of the complexities a bit later there. But for the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to try to keep it simple and clean. So as you can see, we use the Amana adapter, as Mary said, and this is already a preloaded PDF file. We do accept EPUB or Word documents as well, but we prefer to work off the PDFs. So as you can see here, this PDF pulls through on the left-hand side, and then the full ESEF taxonomy is incorporated within the adapter on the right-hand side here. So just to note, there are tens of thousands of tags available within this taxonomy. So if I just quickly scroll through and show you what is actually included within the taxonomy there. But up until 2023, it is only mandatory to tag the primary financial statements. So at the minute, this full taxonomy relates to the whole document. We will only be using a couple of sections at the minute, up until 2023 at least. But just on that, there are a couple of mandatory textual tags that also need applied this year and next year in terms of a successful submission. So one of the first things I'll touch on is how we actually apply the textual tags. So you can see here that it pulls through the PDF and it splits it up nicely into each individual page instead of having to go through and scroll through the full document there. So if I just go through, I already have a couple of tags applied here just to show you what it actually looks like. But one of the mandatory tags, mandatory textual tags, is the name of the reporting entity. So here we have a tag name of reporting entity. And at this point, it's Coca-Cola. So in terms of tagging the actual text, it's a simple highlight and drag and drop. So I highlighted the name, dragged the tag over, dropped it on the word should be placed. And essentially that is the textual tags applied. So nice and simple there. Then it does get a bit more complex when you go into the primary financial statements. So first of all, I have an untagged income statement here. So instead of the way we tag the text, we don't simply just highlight and apply the tag. we actually highlight the full table, and I throw on something that is called a placeholder. So if I just drag and drop this placeholder, you can see it creates a full table on the income statement. And if I go to table tag in here, you will see it splits it up almost into like an Excel format where you have cells. And that way we can highlight each cell and tag each cell there. So that's how we create the tables in terms of the financial statements. And if I just touch on a partly tagged balance sheet here, this is where I'll show you how to apply the actual tags. So you can see here, some tags have been left out. This is the current assets section of the balance sheet. So if we take it one line item at a time, we have inventories here. So there's a couple of different ways to find these tags. One of the ways is just to go through and find it in the taxonomy yourself. So just based on my knowledge, I know where these tags already are. So if we go into your financial position, assets, current assets, and you have current inventories here. So you can simply drag and drop onto those cells, and that would be the tag applied to those cells. There are a couple of things you need to do though. So if we have tagging properties here, a couple of things I will touch on in just a minute. I just want to try to keep it as simple as possible for the demo. We have decimals. So -5 means that it has been stated in millions. So essentially, there's 5 zeros missing from this stated value to get to the fact value. So we can change the decimals, the scaling, what we have in millions, sign logic, I will touch on in a minute, and your currency, your labels, and you also have your date of reporting periods then. But all these I will touch on in a couple of minutes there. I just want to briefly show you how we actually apply the tags. So that's one of the ways to find it yourself there. If we look at this line item, other financial assets, another way of actually finding the tag is using the search bar at the top. So I can search just by typing. So if I have other current financial assets, if I just type, it brings up each of the results here, and I will see other current financial assets. So again, that would just be a drag and drop, and I would go through my properties, fix that tag. And then for this line item, as Mary touched on before, there is the option of extending and anchoring back. So this usually happens when the line item is a little bit too specific for the taxonomy, and as such, a tag does not exist relating to that line item, or if there are more than one line items grouped into the one number there. So for this instance, we have trade receivables, other receivables, and other assets all included in one line item there. So this is an instance where we would extend. So if I use this function, and then it brings me up this anchor section. So there, from this point, I can actually add in as many different anchors as I like there. So for simple terms, I have trade receivables. So if I drag and drop into my anchor box there, we have current trade receivables. Then I would have current receivables. Other current receivables here. So that would be anchored to 2 tags there. And then the last item is the other assets that is stated there. So I believe there are, and that would be your third anchor. And then just on this, there is this option of a wider anchor. So a wider anchor, every extension has to have a wider anchor. This pretty much means it's the main tag that it's grouped to. So as you can see, I have 3 line items here, and then as a wider anchor, I would actually use the next subtotal. So because this is included in your current asset section, current assets. So I can drag and drop that in. So there are 4 tags that has been anchored to, and the current assets would be the wider anchor. So that simply groups everything back together then. So that's the process of tagging there. You will see that this one has been highlighted as red or orange there. That is a simple process that we use for our internal review. I have different options of red, yellow, and green. So red is when it's being edited, yellow is pending review, and green is when it is final. And one more thing I just wanted to point out there. You'll see these boxes have been highlighted as red. So this means they are included within a calculation. And calculations are mandatory throughout your document and apply to most subtotals there. So I actually have this calculation section. And you can see that there's red numbers coming up here. So it's telling me that it is incorrect. So if I remove the calculation, and I can simply go through and add in the calculations again. So for this point, I just wanted to leave this as red, as this is one of the things that I wanted to show you later on. But one thing I did just want to point out is this does take into consideration all the debit and credit values. So if a calculation doesn't actually add up, we will get this red number. And it doesn't actually let me create the output. So as such, once all the outputs have been created, you can be ensured that the debits and credits have all been tagged correctly there. So in a nutshell, that is the tagging process. But I also just have this kind of complexity section that I wanted to show you there. So in terms of the tagging properties, this was the bar that I was working on there. And I just wanted to take you through and show you different things. So we have different ways of stating the values there. So you have fixed zero, number comma decimal, number dot decimal, and number unit decimal. These probably won't mean a lot to you there, but fixed zero is pretty much that we can state that a dash has been tagged, and that is related to a fixed zero then, as opposed to it showing up as a dash. And then as you can see, the comma decimal, this is how the value would be stated with a comma there. Then we have the decimal point. And then we have it actually in words there. The only one we actually cannot tag is when values have been stated with an apostrophe as opposed to a comma or a decimal, but it's not very often that we would see that. And then I just wanted to point out the scaling, so we can do thousands, millions, billions, and percent. It all depends on how the actual report is stated there. Other things we have is this sign logic function. So we have always positive, always negative, or this reverse function. So reverse is when we would need to remove the brackets almost. So in simple terms, a reverse credit would be a debit, or a reverse debit would be a credit. We actually don't have the ability to amend the debit or credit values. They are already pre-designed to the tags. Therefore, we use this sign logic as a reverse function, which would ensure that debits and credits are correct. Then we have the status, which I touched on there, just the different colors. And as you can see, the unit, so we have different currencies. You can choose all different currencies within that. And we have preferred label role. So we tend to stick with standard. Verbose is just when labels might conflict with each other. So if the same tag applies to the income statement as the statement of changes in equity, sometimes they are labeled a little different. So sometimes the profit and loss in the income statement would be labeled profit loss, and in the equity, it would just be labeled profit. As such, then we can use that verbose option, which means explained in more words than necessary, pretty much. And then you can see we have totals, we have period start, period end, all different ways to state the labels as to ensure that they don't clash with each other. And then just one thing I wanted to touch on there was the actual extensions. So this was our extended tag. We do have the ability to amend the debit or credit balance on the extensions. It's just not on the fully applied tags from the IFRS taxonomy. So on extended tags, we can amend debit credit, and there wouldn't be a need to use that reverse function then. And again, then we can change the item type. So if it's a monetary, or if it's shares or per share as such, all different item types we can choose there. And then period type. So we have instant or duration. Instant is pretty much at that time there and then, or duration is the value over the full reporting date period. And then when I'm just looking at the anchoring, each of these I just showed you there and the wider anchor. And the one thing I just wanted to point out then was the calculation section. So when the calculations are correct, you will see this green number. And it shows you each of the boxes that have been included, their calculated value, and the total sum of the calculation. So that would be a correct calculation. An incorrect calculation would show up the red number. And as you can see from here, you can actually see which box hasn't been included in the calculation. And the good thing is it actually gives me the value as to how much it's out by. So that would be an easy fix just to show you that one. And then another way that the calculation may be incorrect is you can see all of the boxes have been included. However, just here you will see that one has been tagged as a credit as opposed to a debit. And then as such, it's showing me how much it's out by. So that is how we ensure all debits and credits are correct. So essentially that is the tagging process. Just a couple more things then. I just wanted to show you the output provided. So this is what you will use to review the documents. So this is the XHTML, and as you can see, it appears directly as the PDF appears, but in XHTML format. Then you have your display options at the top. So if I hit highlight, this will highlight every tag that has been applied throughout the report. And if I use these arrows, this will take you through each tag applied individually. And you'll see here all of your tags applied to the financial statements. And everything as such there. And this is something that I do go over on a handover call with each client there to tell them what they should be looking for and how to actually use this document and how to complete the review process. So I won't go into too much detail at the minute there. And one final thing I just wanted to show you then, Mary touched on that there would be an Excel supplied as well. As you can see, the Excel isn't as user-friendly as the XHTML. So the Excel does contain all the same information, but it's just laid out a little differently there. The nice thing is that it splits it up into each of your primary financial statements at the bottom, and you can work your way through, and things you would look out for here. You've name and label of the tag and your XBRL value, shown value, and a whole bunch of other information there. But again, this is something that I will go through on a handover call. Once each document has been completed, I run several calls with each client just to touch on what they should be looking for and things that they should be looking out for and how to actually complete the process. So hopefully you will have learned a lot from my session there. It's fun in my eyes. Maybe I bored a couple of people there, but that is essentially the tagging process in a nutshell.
Thanks, Colin. That was that was great. I'm glad I described it as the art of tagging. I think my point proven there. We do have a couple of questions. I'll just read them out if that's okay. So on the primary statements, does tagging apply to the total only or both the headline and non-headline and the total?
So on the primary statements, it is each line item that needs to be tagged. Your total, as Colin touched on, will likely have a calculation in there. If we can do a calculation, that would be determined by whether each line item has the same duration. But yes, it's every line item in the primary statements for the current year and prior year that must be tagged.
Okay, excellent. And then there's another question here on the role of the auditors. I wondered if one of you could maybe give a little insight on that.
If only we could, Merkel. I think from our perspective, in the UK, it is unlikely that there will be an audit requirement in year one. However, we do have quite a close relationship with all the big four in the UK, so it is on their radar. The rest of the EU, so if you are listed elsewhere in the EU, you will have an audit requirement. It is up to each individual jurisdiction as to what level of audit requirement there is. But certainly we've worked with, as I said, we've now submitted to 8 jurisdictions across the EU. So we have quite a close relationship with auditors in Germany, Ireland, France, the Netherlands, Spain, Greece.
Right.
But they all have different audit requirements. The UK, our recommendation is go and speak to your auditors. It is on their radar. When it comes to year 2, if there is an audit requirement required, there's obviously going to be a lot more tags to review. So I know a lot of our clients are pushing ahead with an audit review this year, be that light touch, where they're reviewing the tracking of the prior year report. But from our perspective, certainly have that conversation with your auditors. If you're listed elsewhere in Europe and you have a specific question around that country itself, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Colin or even Marco, and Marco can direct to us.
Excellent. No more questions. Please feel free to continue asking questions. And I think Mary, you've got some questions, some frequently asked questions now, don't you? Yeah,
absolutely. So I think that is yes, it is the next. So what is the format of the final report for submission? It is XHTML format with the tags embedded into the different sections. So Colin, it is an example of what Colin showed on the screen there a moment ago without that inline viewer built in. So it will look identical to your PDF. It will just open in XHTML format. We will provide you a copy of your prior year report in that format. And at that stage, we recommend that you have your team who would usually upload your PDF report to your website. You can give them a copy of that report so they're familiar with what is required next year. But for our clients, and Marco, I think some of your clients have already published their report as well this year on the website, and it's been a relatively straightforward process.
It has been, yes.
Where do you submit your report? So in the UK, it is the National Storage Mechanism. And as I've already mentioned, Companies House are building a portal to accept the reports as well. So if you're just based in the UK or just listed on the London Stock Exchange, it may be easier for you to just use the UK SEF version of the taxonomy, as that can be submitted to both the National Storage Mechanism and Companies House. If you're dual listed elsewhere in Europe, a lot of our clients are going ahead with the standard ESEF taxonomy because that is the taxonomy that's accepted in both jurisdictions in Europe. But of course, we can add the additional tags for UK SEF if you also wish to submit to Companies House. If you're listed elsewhere in Europe, it is the regional OAM, so that's Euronext Dublin in Ireland. But we're on hand to help if you're unsure of where to submit your report. Have the UK diverged from the ESMA mandate? Yes, to an extent. Obviously, the fact that we're no longer in the EU, the UK have introduced their own regulation when it comes to ESEF, and that is why we are unlikely to have an audit requirement in year 1. And obviously, we also have then the introduction of UK SEF. So the standard ESMA ESEF taxonomy is still accepted by the National Storage Mechanism, and we don't foresee that being restricted anytime soon. But the National Storage Mechanism will also accept the UK adoption of the ESEF taxonomy, which is UK SEF. The other then divergence is the audit requirements not being in place for the mandated submissions in year 1. And down the line, who knows, regulation changes may also be introduced. We know for sure that it is primary statements year 1, block tagging of notes year 2, but with the likes of your SEC or disclosure tags being included in the base taxonomy for UK SEF, that may be introduced in year 3 or year 4, who knows. But yes, they can further diverge. I don't think it's really will make sense to diverge hugely, but certainly maybe some regulation changes in there. Do we support any other languages? Yes, we can support French and Spanish conversions as well. I don't think you'll get myself or Colin tagging either of those reports, but we can support those languages and any English submissions right across the EU. Do our auditors need to review? So as I've touched on this, certainly our recommendation is have that conversation with your auditors. It is on their radar. It is coming down the line in the UK. Unlikely to be year 1, given where we are in the year at the moment, and we've had no update. But we certainly recommend you have that conversation with your auditors. If you're listed elsewhere in Europe, you will have an audit requirement that will be determined on the jurisdiction that you're listed in. And if you're unsure about what that audit requirement is, please feel free to get in touch. And again, what if you're listed in 2 jurisdictions? So if you're listed in London and elsewhere in Europe, that means that you will have to submit 2 reports. Well, I guess if you're listed anywhere in Europe in 2 jurisdictions, you will have to submit 2 different reports. To make things easy, each regulator has their own requirements as to what you need to submit. be that the naming conventions of the reports, etc. So it won't be a simple matter of having one report that you submit to jurisdictions. There will be two different, actually a zipped file that you submit. The tagging of the reports have to be identical. So there can't be any changes, even if it is in a different language, there can't be any changes to the tagging of the report. But there is likely to be some minor changes with your actual folder that you need to submit. For the UK is actually an XBRL format, and the naming conventions we know are different in the likes of France and Ireland, etc. But the team here in Colin and the team are well familiar with the requirements right across Europe. So we'll ensure that we have where you're submitting your reports to and ensure that your folder is applicable for that submission. And that's our end of our FAQs. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A box. I don't think we have any further ones, Marco, have we?
There's only one more, which I think I can field, which was what actually gets uploaded to the website. So I think what we have done with the recommendation we have given clients, and certainly the corporate websites that we look after, excuse me, we have uploaded the PDF clearly, because the PDF needs to be there, great for printing, great for readability, particularly on mobile phones if you're on the move. But we then also included the zip download of all of effectively the ESEF report that is produced by Arkk, and the report that gets submitted to the national storage mechanism. Now, one of the things that I was in discussions with the FRC, and one of the things that we agreed would be a good idea for the real submission is actually to have a link to the preview report that Colin gave a brief demonstration there at the end. So any analyst or any potential interested visitor would be able to go in and, as Colin showed you, highlight the particular tags and scroll through the tags to see what the IXBRL values are. So I know that has some implications on hosting, because clearly you're now hosting a document, not just for download, but serving to visitors. So at Black Sun, that is something that we're looking at, and particularly for our clients, is something that we're looking to accommodate in future. And I think that was the last question. So I think what I'm going to do is just take a couple of minutes to sum up. So if there are any last-minute questions, please do pop them into the Q&A tool, and we'll answer them after my my key points and takeaways. So ESEF is separate and in addition to the HMRC IXBRL. Arkk can clearly assist with both, so please do get in touch if the HMRC IXBRL is something that you also would like to do as part of your ESEF. As Mary explained at the beginning, ESEF will absolutely improve access, analysis, and comparability of financial statements across the EU by adding this machine readable layer to the annual report. It affects all London Stock Exchange listed organizations for accounting periods starting on or after the 1st of January 2021. It is only the primary statements that must be tagged in the first year, with block tagging of notes becoming mandatory in year 2 or 2023. At some point, I certainly believe this, at some point, the auditors are expected to assist and advise. Certainly, this is true in the UK. It is on their radar, as Mary pointed out. So please do reach out to your auditors if you'd like their assistance or advice. And then my final point really is, together with Arkk Solution, Black Sun offers a complete and streamlined solution to deliver our clients' ESEF requirements. We help simplify this process and make your annual report fit for this new requirement. So I think that that summarizes the key points, the most salient points. So there aren't any more questions. So no, I'm finishing a little bit early. So I think we're ready to wrap up. So all that's left for me to say is please do get in touch if you have any further thoughts and questions. I know we have gone into a lot of detail here, particularly with the tagging. But of course, we will circulate the presentation afterwards, and the whole Black Sun team is around to provide any additional support you may require. So my thanks to Arkk for their very insightful presentations, and a huge thank you to you all for attending. And we certainly hope to see you soon at the next Black Sun event, and hopefully in person next time. So thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you.